Are you feeling overwhelmed by hormonal changes? If you're a woman, you're not alone. With over 1,000 hormone disruptors in our environment, it's no wonder things can feel out of balance. On top of that, natural changes like PMS, menopause, and other life stages can leave you feeling tired, irritable, and trapped in a constant battle with your body. But here's the good news. You don't have to suffer through it. Hormone Harmony by Happy Mammoth is here to help. This herbal formula fine-tunes your hormones, balancing estrogen, testosterone, and even stress hormones like cortisol, which can contribute to weight gain, racing thoughts, poor sleep, and more. With over 40,000 five-star reviews and a bottle selling every 24 seconds, the results speak for themselves. Ready to feel like yourself again? For a limited time, get 15% off your first order at happymammoth.com using code NEXTCHAPTER at checkout. Visit happymammoth.com today and get your old self back naturally.
Your old or broken phone can let you down when you need it most.
Perfect.
But at Verizon, trade in any old phone from our top brands and get the most for it, up to $2,000 in value, for an amazing new iPhone 16 Pro with Apple Intelligence and a new line on My Plan, and iPad and Apple Watch Series 10. That's like a 3-for-1. And you can get it on any plan. At Verizon, trade in your old phone for a brand new iPhone 16 Pro, iPad, and Apple Watch. The other guys won't give you that. Visit Verizon.com today. Additional terms apply. Service plan required for Apple Watch and iPad. Up to $2,000 value based on iPhone, iPad, and Apple Watch.
Welcome to the Trish and Sarah Wrestling Podcast. I'm Sarah. I'm Trish.
What?
Why didn't you say your name?
I wasn't asked.
Oh, extending invitations everywhere. Anyway, I'm Trish.
I'm Sarah.
And this is our podcast. We talk about wrestling news and various topics from different promotions, primarily AEW, but also New Japan Pro Wrestling, WWE, and topics from around the wrestling world. Whatever we find interesting, and we hope you will too. We are a proud member of the Social Suplex Podcast Network, and you can find our content on our podcast feed, the Social Suplex Podcast feed, as well as on Twitter and YouTube. Please feel free to like, subscribe, and rate our podcast. We also have a store at Chop Tees, so if you would like to support us or just own a really cool quality piece of clothing, please take a look at chopped-tees.com/collections/social suplex network. And as far as like a little bit of business for us, similar to what Tunnel Talk spoke about this morning, we are going to start having ads on our podcast, folks. Not too many, not too overwhelming, and not too crazy, but a little bit of income will help us come up with some t-shirt designs for some potential new items that we can have in our store, as well as paying producer Leah back for all of the things that she has done for us. So just to give you a heads up, and if you have any issues with your podcast feed or any problems, please do not hesitate to reach out to us, either by email or in our Discord, where we always enjoy hearing about the technical issues associated with whatever link I manage to figure out to post on when I do decide to do that. So there you go. All right. It is Sunday, March 16th, 2025, and we are going to kick things off today with discussing last weekend's AEW pay-per-view, Revolution, which was an absolutely outstanding pay-per-view with a perfectly cromulent main event. So this pay-per-view had everything. It had blood, it had cages, it had tag matches, it had celebrities, it had it was a absolutely enjoyable, great pay-per-view. I really had a good time. Trish, what were your favorite moments from Revolution?
What I really liked about this show was so many of like the really great things on it felt really different. So you started with the opener. And I know everyone gives Max stick for always being the opener on these shows, but this was one of those moments where it actually should have been the opener. And it made perfect sense because you've got this first match in a program, and it's between, two of your biggest kind of homemade stars, maybe not homegrown, but definitely homemade. And it's, no stip, no nothing like that. So it felt like the right thing to open. But that was, a very simple storytelling match. Where they used everything that they brought in with it. Max being scared of like the buckshot and basically knowing, that this other guy without the shortcuts is better than him. And I liked how different that was to the Momo Watanabe and Mercedes match. Yep. To you've got this huge ending of a program with Tony Storm and Mariah May, and we'll talk about where that should have been placed later. And everything like that. And, you know, that one was quite short, but it did absolutely everything it should have done. And then you having, you know, this display of just kind of in-ring storytelling prowess with Kenny Omega and Takeshita, and how that feels so different. And then the kind of, what you have with Swerve and Ricochet as well. So and you could carry on going down the card, but there's just so much that felt different. It never felt repetitive in that manner. Yeah. And you had all them different, you know, it's the Max thing, isn't it? But the different flavours of ice cream, and nothing felt over-imposing until we got to the end. And it worked, you know? It's a cumulative of so many of these kind of big stories as well. Yeah. Outside of the opener. And that made for, you know, not just an enjoyable pay-per-view, but a really consequential one.
I thought the benefit of having MJF and Hangman open was because it was like one of the few matches on the card that was not the culmination of like a long or longer program. It was something that was, you know, relatively short duration, kind of a start to kick off. You knew there was probably going to be more to it. It was like Act 1, right? And I thought that was, you know, a real positive. And, you know, the other thing I think that's worth pointing out here is the number of babyface wins we had on this card. I think we had an episode where we talked about how many heels won at World's End, and it was really radically different here. You had victories for Hangman, Swerve, Ospreay, Tony Storm, Omega. Like, you had a lot of babyface victories, which I think made everything feel a lot more positive and upbeat in a lot of ways.
And that used to be the center point of their pay-per-views. Yes. You know, it used to be, you could have the heels win on TV, but you used to build the pay-per-views around that babyface energy. And being that this is just a strong point of their kind of promotion, it makes sense to kind of platform the babyfaces for these moments. And losing the way of that has been something that's kind of hurt them. So, yeah, the opener... So, the thing about... Do you know, I thought I was going insane last week, right? I actually thought I was going insane. Because when you look at Max and Hangman, right? The build said to me, the babyface needs to go over clean. Yes. They had 3 weeks of the heel kind of getting the advantage. So, you know, he spits in his face after the first promo. He beats up Christopher Daniels after the second one. And then the third one, you know, I think there was 3 instances where he makes him look like a bit of an idiot before he tries to set him on fire. And then, you know, getting pulled away going, let me prove my point, which is what we do on here every Sunday.
That's so true.
But he was like... and then he was on, I think Max was on Twitter, and he's just kind of, you know, we'll find out who's real. And at that point I was like, and I still didn't believe it because I don't trust anybody when it comes to Hangman's booking. But I was just like, he has to win. Like, you've literally set this up. The only way that you can continue this is a clean babyface. When everyone's saying, oh, you know, I thought a heel would win first, because that's like, but look what they've done with the program. You know, the only way this continues is if the babyface wins and the heel's jealous. Like, you can't... What would Hangman do? Just whine about it and get another... Why would you do that? Like, that makes no sense. So, yeah, I actually thought... Because I thought if he doesn't win, it's very heel-heavy going in. Like, you've kind of... You're weakening him, and you've got to be careful with this one, because this is a turn at the moment. You know, he's still a tweener. He's not a babyface yet. You know, they're playing into that. You know, you can see the moments they've set up. You know, there's going to be a turn on a ramp and saving someone somewhere. You know, the music's going to hit back at some point. You know, he's playing on the tunnel thing and all that sort of thing. So, but you do have to be careful with it and with the timing of it. And I think, you know, that was the only thing coming out of it when you saw like the Max and the Hurt Syndicate thing, was like, you've got to be careful with who's actually a heel. Are you going to play into that? And also, you know, he needs to be talking more, I think, is a big thing coming out of it. But I did think Max did a really good job. He put him over clean. You know, I was trying to think of, outside Samoa Joe, which had like the lead up of Max being burnt, I can't think of the last clean win that someone was given by Max that actually was kind of used afterwards, because the only other thing you can think of is Wardlow, and Wardlow was, well, that was dead 3 days later. Yeah. So... Yeah, he did a really good job at that. They did a great job in the build. it's going to continue. And I can see, I think what we're doing at the moment is you have Max kind of doing that thing where he thinks about kind of a different path and then he ends up down a darker one. And they've done that before. Did it with the CM Punk stuff before Revolution in 2022. So I think that's kind of where we're going with that. And the Hurt Syndicate, they did the little promo with Hangman a few weeks ago as well. So that's always kind of felt like it feels like they're still on the same path. But yeah, they did a good job of just being an opener. I think there's all this talk about where you are on the card and that sort of thing, but I do think there's a real important thing about being able to deliver a strong opener and setting the tone for a card, but also not trying to overdo it so you don't overall the rest of it. And I think they did a perfect job of that. And
I thought it was
yeah.
I thought it was a good match. It was a zippy match. I thought it was interesting at the front of it. I mean, it's clearly an MJF driven feud at this point, and that's part of the reason why Hangman had to get the win, because and that was another thing that I think I was shocked by, even though I probably shouldn't have been, but it's kind of like a sad, I don't know, it's kind of one of those things where you're like, the booking that makes the most logical sense and you don't have a lot of confidence that it's going to actually happen sort of says something about where your promotion has been, but
to be fair, right, like, you're not like out of turn to think like that. So
no,
because let me bring up my my little chart here.
Oh, she loves a chart.
I do love a chart. We got lots
I
of
do
charts
love a chart too.
today. Right. So prior to this pay-per-view, right, since Double or Nothing 2022, because that was when there was a real change of philosophy, right? What do you think percentage on pay-per-view Adam Page is?
For wins?
Yeah.
Are you counting singles only or tags?
No, singles tags. Yeah.
Like 2%?
No.
It's low.
It is low. It is the lowest of any person in the company who has ever main evented a pay-per-view.
Yeah.
So
he beat Mox. He beat
Swerve.
He beat Mox. He beat Swerve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They won the 10-man at Forbidden Door.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And then
Blood
this
and Guts.
one. No, Blood and Guts wasn't pay-per-view. So. Yeah, so you literally are on 4, which is the same amount as Max won last year since he came back in June. So, yeah, I think someone put it on our Discord that was like, it's been 1,099 days since he pinned somebody, which was Adam Cole at Revolution in 2022, and that's right. So, yeah, his win rate now on pay-per-view in the last nearly 3 years is 27%, was 21% before this one. And MJF's is 81%, top of the tree. So it's a big, vast difference. So I don't think that it was something to not be nervous about. But I do think that he needs to become more involved in the program as it goes forward now. And, as much as this is about rehabbing MJF, this is your chance at a really big babyface turn that you've never been able to do. We've never had a babyface turn by action, by, a person turning. It's always been like, someone's come back from, they've been away with an injury, or we just turn them because the crowd responded, but we don't actually use like any initiative or any action to get there. And this will be this is the first major turn they've ever had like that. So, or someone's turned on them, but we've not had a babyface choose to be a babyface. So don't fuck that up. You need to give him a chance to talk. You need to him to become more involved, but in terms of what we thought going in, I think they have exceeded the expectations.
They've certainly exceeded my expectations. I was the one that was like, this isn't going to go well. It's not going to be a good program, blah, blah, blah. And so far, like Act 1 wise, I've enjoyed it very much. I think MJF could do a little less mid-match monologuing, but I think that's true of a lot of people in AEW right now. And that seems to be the thing in wrestling, is we've got to have like a whole conversation to explain our motives. I'm curious as to where they go next with some of this stuff. I think Hangman needs like almost a heel setback in some ways, because I think if, I almost want to see him like sort of be an asshole to somebody just to kind of underline it a little bit. But, I'm along for the ride on this. Like, go for it. I'm happy. You guys are doing a good job. This is a good program. Like, let's see where we end up.
We just talk about how stupid the reaction to his hair was.
Yes, please, because I have listened to so many men say so many stupid things, and I'm like, could you talk to a woman or like someone with curly hair? Like no, Hangman did not get a perm, you dumbasses. like why? Like, first of all, like, this is a clear choice. Like, Hangman is very meticulous in the way he chooses to present himself, and every major feud that he's in changes the way he presents himself. He's different, right? You could see it after, he had the Mox feud, he started wearing the leather jacket. He had the Swerve feud, he started wearing the gold chain. He went back to being more of a babyface, he's in lighter colors and not black all the time, right? So he clearly, thank the Lord Jesus, wants to keep the mustache, which I'm very happy about. But he also wants to kind of give some kind of signifier that he's back. And from my perspective, the hair is perfect because it's basically the haircut he had. If you watch those videos with the Christopher Daniels program, him from when he was a baby, it's the haircut he had when he was a kid. So it's like he's been reborn, right?
Yes.
Back into his youth. And because I'm going to say this very nicely. White people with curly hair, we have a finer hair consistency. Many of us, not everybody, but many white people have thinner, finer hair. So when we cut our hair and it gets curly, the longer it is, the harder it is to sustain a curl. Okay. So this man cut his hair and now his hair is curly. And as Tunnel Talk pointed out today, he's not loading it down with grease and wetness and other shitty products. He just has curly hair. So there's no perm. There's no none of this. Everybody just calm the fuck down. And this idea that Hangman isn't actively choosing the way his appearance is to match his character. Like, no, he's not. Yeah, this is just an accident. Like,
it's just an accident. Like, but it's so funny, right? And I'm not generalizing women and men, and maybe I am, but men that are kind of understand his character or are kind of in tune with the way he does his storytelling pointed it out straight away as well. It's it's a rebirth, it's a regeneration. He's got embers going down his thing. He's talking about dogwoods, he's in his tweets and his skeets or whatever. He matches everything as part of it. There's not one part of this whole thing that isn't part of the characterization, because that's how he does his storytelling. And it's like everyone was like, oh look, he's baby Hangman again. And it was like we saw it and the rest of them were like, he's got a perm, and I'm like,
it's just, listen, it's just another circumstance in which I feel that, most men should not be, they're too emotional to talk about wrestling, and they should not be allowed to do podcasts. I'm just going to put down.
There's certain things about Hangman that may not be for everyone, but for the people that do appreciate it, it's we like the kind of depth that he goes to with.
Yes, it's always there. There's always something there. Like, there's something to look at and like something to engage with you as a fan, right? Which I think a lot of other wrestlers could learn from.
Absolutely.
So anyway, Hangman and MJF. Keep up the good work, gentlemen. Keep up the good work. Good
gold
job,
star,
MJF.
Gold star, Max.
Gold
you get a gold star. We or well done cup, whatever you want to call it. Whatever our version of Mummy's Little Hand Award is.
Well, so this is funny because you did not listen to Tunnel Talk today because they gave out They gave up the most cooperative award to MJF this morning.
I need to change my pattern to Sunday morning from Sunday night. I really do. Getting called out on our own podcast.
What did you think of the blow off to Swerve versus Ricochet?
I thought that it really built on the match they had in Atlanta, that had the right energy, and I was happy that they didn't try and mess about with it too much.
Yeah.
I think especially once you made it a number one contenders match, you need that to be kind of pretty straightforward. I was surprised, they didn't do more with the robe actually, but maybe that's a good thing. Do we need to be kind of? I don't know. But I thought it had a good energy to it as well. And, this is a program that's completely over-delivered. And I thought they were great. I'm really looking forward to seeing what Ricochet does next. And can he sustain this energy with somebody else? I thought they did a great job. I'm kind of glad they didn't do more with the robe. I'm kind of glad they didn't do a Prince Nana breakup angle. Like we talked about this last time and I did not want it. I feel like we've had so much heel heat and heel heavy shit on these shows lately in the last 6 months or so that having something like this just end positively all around was really nice. And like just a really nice ending. I thought the match was great. I thought the fact that they just started at each other right away was really good and matched the energy of the feud, right? Like that these guys hate each other and they just went for it. It was just, I don't know, it was just a perfect ending to a really well executed feud that, I think like you said, overperformed essentially. Yeah, and it massively did because you took someone like Ricochet who came in and kind of wasn't going to succeed as just the kind of generic babyface that's come from WWE.
Yep.
And turned him into a real character. Probably one of the easily, one of the best heel performances on the roster in the last, however long. And it's important how he kind of moves on from here. I think we'll see him in a match for a championship in about 3 weeks.
I think he's got to be the favorite to win that. Like, it's hard to look at that and think that, it is Philadelphia, but I can't see them putting Kenny against Orange Cassidy in this, configuration.
Isn't Ricochet from Philadelphia? Is he Philly? He's wearing Phillies hats everywhere, not Phillies. Eagles hats everywhere, right?
He's an Eagles fan, but they bill him as from Las Vegas.
Okay, right, yeah. Oh yes, yeah, because he used to have lived on the go. So that would be interesting to see how that style match up. It's a different type of match, but I think keeping, and it's always the same, keeping people's momentum after they exit these kind of programs is important, and it's the same for Strickland as well. And this decision for him to challenge at Dynasty, I find it fascinating, like really, really, really fascinating. And I don't know if that's good or bad, because there's so many points to this. So he's challenging at the pay-per-view that's going to be most under threat in terms of pressure for numbers, right?
Yep.
So you've had Moxley and Copeland at Revolution, traditionally now the second biggest show, last year the biggest show for pay-per-view of the year, in a major market where they've drawn over 10,000 on multiple occasions. Their last pay-per-view, 12,900, this one, 11,600. And, you're going to go into Philadelphia for Dynasty, which is, not as a recognised name. It's not one of the original kind of 4 pay-per-views, or 5 if you include All In. And then you are going with 2 weeks less than last year, where, you had 6 weeks between Revolution and Dynasty. You're going with, I think there's 4,300 already in the building. Biggest attendance in that building was 7,000 back in October 21 for the ladder match, the casino ladder match that Paige came back through. And it's like, this is a challenge. And it's like, and then to add on top of it, we've now got 2 weeks where the focus of the build is not on that match, it's on Adam Copeland and Jon Moxley. So it's like, that's a real short period to be trying to be successful. And it just makes me like really interested. Why would you not do that at Double or Nothing? Why would you do that? Like, unless you're doing a change here, like, you're making it susceptible. Because it's the same as like the All Out thing last year, right? So you have that Paige and Strickland match, and it doesn't matter that actually it was better like for like 100k to 95k than the year before, and actually one of the only 2 pay-per-views according to the company that was up last year, because it looks a low figure because of where it sits and where it is on the calendar. And it's the same here. So you'll get people that are going to look at this buy rate and going to look at this number and are going to downplay Strickland. But he's not being positioned to succeed. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
I know.
An interesting choice.
I have a lot of thoughts about this, but I feel like I want to get through the main event conversation,
right, we'll
and I want to talk more positively about the rest of the pay-per-view first, and then discuss the main event and talk about some of the stuff from last night's from Dynamite from last night, and then kind of put my thoughts together on this, because I have a lot to say about it.
All right, we'll come back to that. Should we talk about Tony and Mariah?
Yes. This was fucking spectacular. And like, kudos to these women. And like, so many of these fucking men could take a page out of these ladies' book, and just less is fucking more. They started as a sprint and they never stopped, and it gave the energy that the match needed. It was, I thought, from my personal perspective, it was the best match on the card, of a card that had a lot of fucking good matches on it. Right? This was my hands down favorite. This was my match of the night. I thought it was absolutely spectacular. It was a fantastic feud ending. It was just great. And I thought it was, to both of them, like, I thought Mariah did a great job where, sometimes she hasn't always been the strongest, but I really, really enjoyed this. Yeah,
you kind of hit the nail head on. They realised what they needed for the end of this. And I thought it would have been a perfect ending, with the end kind of coming down and everything.
It should have main evented the show. Like, it should have main evented the show. And the fact that it wasn't even really something that you would consider doing, like, it sort of shows like how how far women and women's wrestling have to go, especially in these male-dominated companies, where you have a match like this that's ending a feud that's gone on for what, a
18
year?
months.
18 months.
Yeah.
That was for a championship that, was literally the end, and instead you're going to follow it with stuff that was excellent in 2 out of 3 cases, and like it still wasn't quite like, I don't know. It just is depressing in that way. It was a thing that I thought this probably should main event before they did it, and then afterwards I was like, I don't know why they didn't do this. I thought it would have made everybody happy, but what are you going to say? It's depressing.
Yeah, no, it is depressing, and I think it's a reminder of, as you said, that's exactly where we're up to. But look at it this way. Moxley and Copeland was not a main event that had to be at the top of the card. It was not a title match that had to be at the top of the card. If I think about the ones that actually had to be on the top of the card, I think I come up with 4. Do I come up with 4? Yeah. So there's only 4 in the entire history that, like, you look at the numbers, you look at everything they generated, and you go, they absolutely had to be the main event as a male title match. And that would be Jericho Moxley at Revolution 2020, Revolution 21, the Moxley Omega Death Match, Full Gear 21, Page and Omega, and All In 23, Max and Cole. They are the only matches for the men's world title that absolute no doubt had to be the main event, because they were the biggest drawing things on the card. And the thing is, we've had so many matches that have main evented over the men's world title. Even going back to Moxley Omega Lights Out at Full Gear, 2019, Stadium Stampedes, Anarchy in Arenas. Last year with All Out, obviously with Paige and Strickland. And it just makes me look at it and go, there's no reason. There's none. It's not like, all right, so do Moxie and Copeland sell more merch? No, actually, Tony and Mariah were higher last year and higher coming out of Grand Slam. Is it around TV segments? Was Moxie and Copeland the big drawing cards in this set of programs? Well, no, it's like Kenny Omega's return, and then MJF and Adam Page were the primary. When you look at TV numbers, would probably look at a bigger TV draws than Mox and Copeland. And then, if you want to compare Tony and Mariah's numbers in less favourable slots, they match up and sometimes are ahead of what Copeland and Moxley were doing. So it's like, there's nothing to say where you can justify putting this ahead of kind of the Tony Storm and Mariah matches and ending. And not only did you miss an opportunity, you also made yourself look really dumb. So you're going on about, it was the main event of Grand Slam, and it's like, yes, it was one of the main matches at Grand Slam, but we all know that the first match on them shows is more important than the close.
Yep.
Who remembers the main event of Grand Slam 1? Britt Baker and Ruby Soho, right? No, but no one thinks about that when they think about the first Grand Slam. They think about, open the thing, because that was the actual main event. So what you're doing there is just going, we gave it this, but you're not actually giving it anything. You have to put these in. You have to put these matches in these spots for it to mean anything. It's you brand into tokenism rather than actually pushing people who have achieved enough to be in these spots. If it's about how much work you put in and what the results are, well, they've got the results to be in that spot, and you didn't do it because there were men, and you didn't. What was it? You didn't want to hurt the ego. What was it? I think Wade Keller has. He was very, very kind of blunt about it on his write-up on the Torch newsletter review. And he just put, Tony and Mariah May should have gone on last. The feud reached a level where it pretty much feels disrespectful that they didn't get the final spot just because they're women. Because, make no mistake about it, John Moxley versus Adam Copeland main evented simply because they're men. Yep. No disrespect to Moxley or Copeland in the AEW World title, but that match was the 4th or 5th or 6th most anticipated on this show.
Yep. I think that the freaking depressing part about it is that, the work was there, the like you said, the numbers were there, the emotion was there, the story was there, the whole thing worked, and they still can't get the main event slot, right? And if it's not going to happen when this is like this, then you have to think it's never going to happen. Or if it does happen, like you said, it'll be on Grand Slam or some
It's not. It's bullshit, because it's not a main event on a pay-per-view. It's not where you actually have to put your money where your mouth is.
Right.
And it's not like you can say, there's this belief that the main event still draws the card. On certain occasions, like the 4 I mentioned earlier, those main events drew the card. Most other AEW pay-per-views are a build-up of numbers from different matches because things appeal to different parts of the fan base.
Right.
And this is very much this fan base is not a monoculture.
Unfortunately not sometimes.
No, true. But it's absolutely not. And it's funny because I know Google searches were brought up for this, and it was like, Mox, and it was like, well, Hangman Cole was the most Google searched for Revolution 2022. Does everyone think that was the huge draw on that show, or it wasn't a cumulative of, that might have appealed to some people, MJF and Punk appealed to others, Danielson and Moxley appealed to others, the three-way tag match appealed to others, Britt Baker and Thunder Rose. That's it. It's like, it's not one. And the idea that, we've just seen in Japan for the last year where we've been running actually the main event or the drawing card as the semi-main event, whether it's Hiromu and Naito, whether it's Omega and Gabe Kidd, whether it's they've put the heavyweight belt underneath the juniors, that's not that uncommon. So I just don't see the argument, and I don't see the arguments against. And they missed a huge opportunity here to illustrate that they can be different and they can be more. And as much as we make it's kind of frustrating because we are making progress. And they are making progress in, highlighting some of these stories. But sometimes it does feel like one step forward, two steps back.
Yeah. I'm very interested to see what Tony does next. I'm interested to see what Mariah does next.
Mariah's in the harder spot. She's more likely to be lost. But I do want to say that Tony's promos in the last few weeks have been incredible. Even the one on Collision last night. She's just... It's kind of like... I know she gets compared to Hangman quite a lot in some ways, but the way that she has control of her character and the way that bleeds into everything she does is very, very similar. I was watching the promos last night and it's just like, this is just sensational because, it's just everything works. Yeah. And it's hard to see that many characters who have that kind of continuation that feel like that in AEW in general. Yeah. And I just think her promos have just been fantastic. And I wasn't always, big into this character or to this program. No. But yeah, it works on me. I think they've done a fantastic job with the ending and the fact that straight away, she's on TV, she's cutting promos again. Yes. Was really important.
That's positive. Yes.
Mm-hmm. But yeah.
All right. Kenny versus Takeshita. I have a lot of thoughts about this, and not all of them are positive in some ways. Okay. I thought it was a good match. It was a very good match. I have no complaints about the match whatsoever. I was fascinated by how much the audience really wanted Kenny to dominate or to come back or to do anything, and the death of the audience every time he got cut off, or like he'd start to do something and the crowd would start to go nuts, and then Takeshita would cut him off and the crowd would die. And Dave Meltzer had a whole monologue about, he thinks that this was specifically because the audience wants really strong baby faces who don't ever show weakness. And I don't think it's about baby faces in general. I think it's specifically about Kenny Omega. I think it's hard for me to look at this and not think that the audience wants to see the Kenny Omega we saw against Gabe Kidd, right? Not a Kenny Omega. And I respect that this is probably not a match that he wanted to have with Takeshita necessarily, or that they wanted to show Takeshita looking like weak or in some way. But like the audience fucking loves Kenny Omega. They want to see Kenny Omega be Kenny Omega. They don't necessarily want to see him selling his stomach, and I'm just confused as to why we haven't gotten that yet. Like, we've been kind of asking for it. They did it a little bit with the Ospreay team up, but even that, like, and the other thing I'm kind of like, I don't. What are your thoughts? Because I have more thoughts on this, but I want your thoughts on that first.
It goes back to when he first came back to AEW, and you had Don Callis trying to sell the story from the Tokyo Dome, right? And they were trying to sell a different story. And that's kind of, continued. And I can see, like, the value in doing it in some ways, that you want to build him up till he gets to that kind of top point all in. Or you want to do it so then you can tell a story of Ospreay about him feeling stronger and having to, like, kind of carry Kenny in a sense. I don't know. But I think you're right, because before Kenny's surgery and illness, he was doing this story kind of already. He was losing over and over and over. you're struggling, and we've seen it. Like, yeah, people want it's said too much, but they want the New Japan Kenny Omega.
Yeah.
They want that guy that, and he's only wrestling out once a month now, and they want that guy that feels like a different level, like not in terms of just wrestling ability, but that aura. And there is no one else like him. When you see him with like that, like we saw him in the Tokyo Dome, I don't think there's anyone else in the world like that. There's no one else that makes me feel that way. There's no one else that can make anybody feel that way. There's some fantastic wrestlers in the world. There's some incredible storytellers. But in terms of like in-ring storytelling, I don't think there's anyone above Kenny Omega. But what you're doing is kind of downplaying that. And I thought they did a good job in terms of the position they were in, because they knew what they were coming after. And they worked well to hold the time, to get the crowd back into it, and then to build up to the end. And, that's hard. When you're following these sort of matches, you need to have the ability to do that. And it's funny when I think about so many of the matches that have, in the middle of the cards that have been like crazy or ridiculous or fantastic, it tends to be Kenny or the Bucks that have picked up the slack to follow it, because it's a very rare skill to be able to turn crowds like that. But yeah, I think you could easily have done a different match with Takeshita. I think because he knew he was winning, that they wanted to kind of have him succeed that. But I don't think they've done enough with Takeshita during the period that he's had the belt to kind of... And if you've done more, you wouldn't have to do that. You could just have him going against Kenny, Omega, with both of them kind of like, full-on alphas, and as the nickname goes. And that kind of meet-up would have been, I think much more effective. But does he look at it and look at where he is on the card right now and then think, you build up to that? But yeah, I think you're right. I think we've had years of this, Actually, when you do the silly percentages, second to Adam Page, there's no one else that's lost more on pay-per-view. So we've got used to seeing, this kind of defeated Kenny Omega, and we don't want it. He's come back. We want Kenny Omega, and Najma, who went to the show, who sent us some feedback, said one of the things that she was really struck by was the absolute love for Kenny Omega, and how much Kenny Omega merch was around that venue. And, we've been very critical of the way that he was brought back in terms of Adam Copeland being brought back over the top of him. How stupid does that look right now? And of some of the other aspects of that presentation. And, they need to get there now. They need to kind of figure it out. How you do it, I don't know. But you need to figure out how you literally have him get to the point very, very quickly where he is the god of pro wrestling, where he is that guy. And you can do it there. I don't believe that you can't do that in AEW. And if that means,
they can.
And then you've got, once you get through the face bit, that you could turn him into that heel character. I mean, that what he did at the Dome should be like a blueprint. They should be looking at that, especially now they're getting kind of stronger on the babyface side. Yeah. And they could do with a heel that's different on the other side. You should be looking at it and thinking, at least we have that opportunity, that option. But until then, fans want to cheer for him. You see how loved he was at Dynamite on Wednesday. But they want something to get their teeth into. But they just want to see Kenny Omega. They don't... This is not the time. There's other people that can tell those stories who are in their position of career to tell those stories.
Well... I would also like Kenny to tell a story, right? Like with the Don Callis story, because of Kenny being out, has been going on for years and years and years at this point, right? And now we're in a position where it seems like all we're going to do is set up challengers for Kenny by doing the tournaments, right? So like, could we, this has been the case for the last two pay-per-views, tournaments to get to Kenny. Not like, obviously the Takeshita thing was a little bit more emotional, I get it, but like it didn't really translate. They didn't give Takeshita enough to have him be like a credible, opponent and emotionally. So like, now we're going into another tournament. And listen, I could be completely wrong and they could do some incredible story on Wednesday and blah, 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 blah. But like, I'd like to see him do something, because otherwise it feels like he's just in a holding pattern until All In. And I'm not interested in that. Like, that's not what I'm here for when it comes to this. Like, this is a man who I thought I would potentially never see wrestle again. Like, and he's one of the best storytellers they have on their fucking roster. So, like, what are we doing?
It should feel like more of a celebration than it does.
Yeah.
That's what I keep coming back to. And, he's in it off in his silo. And you're going to keep him across there until he has this Okada match. But you need to do something in the meantime that means something. And, 2-week build after a tournament. I don't know if that will, but we'll see. We'll see. We'll see what happens with that one. But yeah, and Takeshita is where we thought he was going to be, free of the belt by Revolution. So yeah, we'll see where he goes. He's obviously got lots of upcoming dates with New Japan. The Tanahashi match is quickly upcoming at Windy City Riot for Tanahashi's last US match. And we'll see where he goes from there. I think, with the success Goto's having, that leaves them more opportunities if they want to lengthen that reign to go to, the unintentional ones are the funniest. To Goto. Yeah. To Goto Dominion or somewhere like that. But there's definitely more options on the table, and we'll see what happens with him. But you can feel like his ceiling in AEW is very much there at current, and it would be best for him to take the opportunities that he's been offered in New Japan. And I look forward to seeing more of him there and developing on that side of things. And he's just an incredible wrestler. And I wish AEW had done more of him with this reign, but it's happened, it's gone. And I look forward to see what he does in New Japan come the summer. So, what have we got left? Any other notes from any of the other matches before we get to this main event? Because we've left it to last to try and be nice about things. But
well, it was a really, really good pay-per-view. And I don't want the thing that focus on the most to be the negative stuff, right? But it was a really, really good pay-per-view. And I want to talk a lot about all the things that I really liked, because there was so much wonderful stuff about this, which I think highlights how much good stuff there is in AEW right now, right? I will say that I thought Ospreay and Fletcher was neither as good nor as bad as some of the responses I've seen about it. I thought it did go too long.
Yeah.
We had friends who went nuts for it. We had friends who were like, it was the greatest match ever until the last 15 minutes, and then I hated everything about it.
Yep.
Like, I didn't think it was quite that bad. Like, I thought that they built to a fantastic peak and then went another 10 minutes.
It could have been the cage match they had in Osaka where they went another 30.
Yeah. It wasn't quite so bad. I would really, I thought about this, and I really feel like this is the kind of comment that will make a bunch of men angry, so I'm going to say it, because why not? I feel like Ospreay, more than anybody else, needs either a good, I'm going to say writer, and that's going to make people angry, or a producer or an agent or someone that he works with who can curb some of his more ridiculous instincts and give him some emotional weight to his storytelling. I feel like this match was a lot like the feud in that it kind of missed its peak a little bit. And that's a thing that I don't, because I find Ospreay to be very likable. I enjoy watching him work. I thought the beginning where he was befuddled by the cage, he couldn't, he was like, oh shoot, I can't be my awesome springy self. That was fantastic. That was great. And then and Fletcher obviously looked fantastic during this. I thought it was a little bit self-indulgent at the end, but I overall really did like this cage match. More positives for me than negatives.
Yeah, I feel similar. I didn't like the finish. I didn't like the Mark Davis stuff. And it's that he needs an editor or a producer in the same way that Max does for promos.
Yeah.
He just needs, I don't know, someone to kind of build that emotional thing. And in fact, he needs to be more Kenny Omega in a really ironic way, but it's like Kenny gets that. I think he knows where to kind of culminate better than anybody else, and that's kind of something that Ospreay just kind of has to add. He's an incredible wrestler. It's just sometimes the timing is just like, okay, why have we carried on past here? It's done. We don't need to do everything. And that, that was, and it wasn't as extreme as that cage match in Osaka where they really did do everything. And it was driving me insane. But sometimes less is more is probably the theme of this show. Many ways.
It's why Tony and Mariah was better than the cage match, because they did less. They built to a perfect ending and finished it. They didn't then linger on with another 4 or 5 spots. And I just felt like, again, not horrible, not it was certainly a lot better than I was my worst fears thought it could be, right? Yeah. But and again, let's see what does Fletcher do from here, right? Where are you going with the Don Callis family? I'm kind of interested to see how they manage to kind of keep these guys hot.
Yeah, and before we get to main, we'll just a few of the business notes as well. So yeah, this year, 11,670 WrestleTix estimate. Full Gear 2023 was 12,904 in the other venue in LA over at the Forum. This was in the Staples Center. We had some comments about it being in the Staples Center as well from some of our listeners that went to the show. And how much more accessible it was, how much more there's kind of to do or to eat around there. But the kind of consistent one that we got, especially from our friends Chris and Doc, was how many kind of more families, kids there were, how much more diverse this show was than Full Gear 2023. Chris had a comment, and this is meant kind of in multiple ways, but I thought it was kind of really well worded. And he just said, quote, it felt closer to the city at large than usual. And I really kind of like that description. And also Doc described, how everyone kind of felt welcomed, no one was looked down upon, and how that kind of felt so refreshing. So I thought that was really a really encouraging thing to hear. And it kind of reflected in kind of the atmosphere outside the main as well. So yeah, that's kind of really cool. The buy rate. So I know Dave Meltzer's first estimate is 135,000 to 140, and that kind of fits into the average for Revolution from Full Gear in terms of the rate of increase. So the Full Gear average until before this last cycle is 115,200 across the time period, and Revolution has averaged 143,000. And you look at last year and think, oh, it did 180 because of the Sting retirement, but then you also got things like Full Gear 21 where you have Adam Page and Kenny Omega doing 105% more than the year previously. So it kind of works itself out. So the average kind of rate of increase has kind of been 24% from Full Gear onwards, and even with in addition to new pay-per-views, that kind of holds because you've got new pay-per-views before each one. So this year was up from Full Gear was at 113,000 on Brandon Thurston's estimate. This one 135,000, so 19%. So it's kind of in the same ballroom, kind of as previous years, and it makes sense, because we had so many cumulative kind of finishes to feuds. You have so much well-developed story because you've got so long to do it compared to the other cycles. And so it was a successful pay-per-view, very much so on a pay-per-view basis, but very much kind of still in the ballpark of what they do in general for this time of year with this amount of build. I just think it's kind of weird to look at it and think you can find some kind of big saying on what this means for AEW, because it's generally where it would normally be. So so I don't want to make any big statements about what that means, but it's a good number. Being that it is in that kind of ballpark. And and then the other question we've got that we got from a couple of our listeners on our Discord was around kind of the conversion rates. So the Nielsen average so far this year for total viewers has been 610,000 in quarter one. And they wonder, if it's 610,000 people, how do we get a number of like 135,000 less, loads and loads of people are watching on Max or elsewhere? And I thought it was quite an interesting one, because I think we talk about 610,000 viewers as though that's the amount of actual people that watch, and it's not. No. So I'm going to split this down, and you're going to have to stop me because I'm going to go into full math mode here now, right? Okay. So of the 135,000 estimate, the split that we estimate that Brandon Thurston also uses is that 65% are domestic and 35% of those buyers are global. So you've got your international and your US. So US number is probably around 87,750. So 88,000 people are your US buyers. And you don't equate that to 610,000 because that 610,000 on Nielsen is an average.
Right.
It's an average for the entire of the show. But not everybody watches the entire show. In fact, AEW viewers average kind of 60 minutes to 75 minutes, which means the amount of people that likely see some part of the show is between 1.2 million and 1.37 million. So your actual base, just in your live to same day viewings, the amount of people that could possibly buy this pay-per-view is not 610,000, it's actually double that. And then if you add in 3-day plus, 7-day plus, you're, for 7-day plus, looking at the first 40-week average of 2024, you're looking at a range between 1.6 and 2.1 million, potentially. So there's a lot larger kind of market available for these pay-per-views just in the US alone than what you think, because we're looking at an average number and thinking that's the amount of people that watch these shows. However, that's not to say that's a bad thing, because if you compare that to the conversion rates for like WCW,
Yes.
so if we look at the amount of people, so the average rate that you get from Nielsen, and we look at how many pay-per-view buys, this one would be at like 14.3%. So 14% of that Nielsen number is the conversion rate. And if you compare that to like WCW, most years their highest pay-per-view was around 10%, which is Starrcade. The only exception that went higher than what this one for Revolution was Starrcade 97, Sting and Hogan, which was 17.1%. None of the others were above 10%. And then, once you get down to 2000, Spring Stampede is the highest at 4.2%.
Yeah.
So this pay-per-view was 3 times more successful at converting its TV viewers into pay-per-view buyers in the US alone than anything that WCW produced in 2000. And this is not, this is why Tony Khan can talk about the loyalty factor and the buy-in being higher for this company than they are for anybody else, because they are able to convert more of their TV viewers than anybody into buying pay-per-views. And that's been the way since the start. I think that's kind of an interesting thing to think about as well, is why is this so different in being able to convert people to pay-per-view from the very start when you didn't even know what the pay-per-view product was, and in the first few years was slightly weaker. The pay-per-view wasn't the strongest part of the show in a lot of aspects. There was a run of kind of poor pay-per-views in a row, actually, with kind of, especially going through kind of summer of 2020, and it wasn't, there was weaknesses to them. It didn't feel as strong as the TV, but they've always had those numbers and that buy-in from their audience since they really kind of started as a promotion.
It says a lot about, like you said, the loyalty of the audience, and it says a lot about how well they've done with the pay-per-views, and how, despite whatever quality you could say about the TV or the booking, people still know that they're going to tune in and get, value for their money.
Yeah, and I think it says a lot for the way that the promotion kind of formed and the impact of people paying for New Japan World, or, who were engaged in, the secondary engagement, who were making additional purchases based on some of the wrestlers and the promotions that they were involved in, and how that has actually transformed into this business from the very start and now been maintained and grown upon. But yeah, that's how it works. So it's not a case of there's only 610,000 people watching AEW every week. That's your average throughout the show, is actually a lot more, and that is why the pay-per-view numbers might seem crazy when you look at those kind of weekly numbers, but it makes sense. But I just wanted to kind of go through that, because I think it's kind of important, especially when you look at all these kind of raw Netflix numbers and everyone's looking at how many global views and all those sorts of things. I think it's becoming harder and harder to kind of explain these things. But let's talk about this main event.
This was so bad. This was so bad. And I don't want to hear about they had to go on last, and they had to go on after all these death matches, and the crowd was burned out, and the show was too long, and it was late. Fuck you. I don't want to hear it. They wanted this spot. They took this spot, and they did the least interesting shit imaginable. The absolute least interesting shit imaginable, with the least amount of energy, the least amount of caring. I don't even know if you could call this a WWE match, because I feel like that would be an insult to WWE matches. This was just terrible. And I say that as someone who watched this completely separate from the rest of the show, right? I came into it fresh. I was like, well, I'm going to watch it later, whatever. This was so bad. This was a Collision main event, okay, at half speed.
I would have fell asleep if it was a Collision main event.
Trish, this was do a move, pause for 30 seconds to a minute and a half. Do another move, pause for 30 seconds to a minute and a half. Anything they did that the crowd got into, they immediately stopped doing it. right? To the point where the announcers talked about, well, a hush has fallen over the crowd because this is so dangerous. Like, no, the crowd is bored out of its mind. Like, there was a point where the crowd started making noise and it was clear there was some kind of fight happening or something going on because everybody was looking in the complete opposite direction. Like, this was... like, what was it, 26 minutes? Nobody gave a shit until Yuta, and Yuta didn't even do a run-in. Yuta did a slow walk-in. That's how bad the pace of this match was. This was just, and Copeland, I thought he was fine. I don't know if it's the surgery or whatever, but he's not been the same in ring since he came back. It's not good. Neither guy looked like they cared that much. And at least the stuff at the end with Christian and the other stuff was at least interesting and it got the crowd going. In terms of actual booking and the show itself, this was just I dare you to defend this. I know you're not gonna. I'm meaning a hypothetical you. What the fuck was this? What the fuck was this? This was so bad.
I do like all the people that are saying, well, it was a regular wrestling match at the end of this. Big show.
Fuck you! It was not.
And it's okay. So are you telling me that there's not other people that could have rescued it? God, Paige and Cole got more out of Revolution 2022 than you guys got. Because they fucking tried. I thought, going into this, I thought they would use every single shortcut that you could. I thought, yep, you're going to do the run-ins. We all know that's coming. But you can brawl into the crowd. That always kind of gets out. They do Anarchy when they're trying to get everyone up from the match previous because they run after the title match. You could do them sort of things. You've got weapon spots you can do. You can do furniture. You can do all those things. Didn't he promise an NWA, brawl, bloody
and
brawl?
a gritty NWA style match.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't do that. So what you actually did was a very WWE main event style match on a house show.
Yeah.
And it's the most I've ever thought of Jon Moxley as a WWE wrestler ever since he's been in AEW. I watched this, and I wasn't watching Jon Moxley. I was watching Dean Ambrose versus Edge. I'm sorry.
Yes.
That's what this was. It's
Yes.
exactly what it was, and it's the absolute antithesis of what should be main eventing an AEW card 6 years in. A company that has only had one main event that hasn't featured someone that's been a world champion in any other major company, or New Japan and WWE, let's be honest. They've only had one, and we're putting this at the top of the second biggest card of the year in one of your biggest markets, and you're telling your media people this is AEW. What are you doing? You went for this match. You did 10 weeks of build for this.
Of shit build! Shit build!
Where at first you did your Bryan Danielson story, and then when it wasn't working, you then changed it to picking him off like you did with the Bloodline. Do you have anything original? Do you understand how far this story now is from where it started to the point where there's no satisfying conclusion because you've killed it? And whatever the fuck is going on with Jon Moxley, this isn't Jon Moxley. Who are you? What is happening?
It's so depressing.
So
depressing.
The idea of doing 3 more months of this because of what? What are you going to achieve? Who are you going to get over by this? When Swerve's cutting a promo last night and he mentions their names and there's just kind of a groan and then they laugh and boo Cope. It's you fucking failed. You failed with this. It was an embarrassment. And, you can do your kind of trying to resurrect everything on Wednesday night and prove it was all right and wrong. No, you didn't do anything to try and get here. It was you gave in and you admitted defeat before you even started. And you should have realised a long time ago that this should have been on Grand Slam Australia and it should have been done. And that was the height that it should have reached in AEW. It didn't need to be in a main event. You didn't need to bring him back over Kenny Omega. You didn't need to give him as much as you did. You didn't need to do that and make him the strong baby face so he can produce things for a fucking video package, but then he can't deliver. What were you doing? What were you thinking? You buried all these homemade guys, all these originals, when this whole story was, we're going to lift up the originals. Well, let's see. Who did you help? I wrote a list. Yeah. I wrote a list. So, who did you help? Did you help Private Party? Maybe we don't discuss that one. Did you help Daniel Garcia? Well, he won the TNT. He doesn't give a shit. Now he's in the same spot. Not involved in the program anymore. You had Adam Cole run out for that thing at Wrestle Dream or whatever. Yeah, okay, he's in trios now. He's not saving anyone either. You have Darby Allin, you take the title shot, you change whatever that was going to be, and then he loses to Claudio twice, he's been pushed down the stairs, and now, because he's off TV and because of the way this program is, everyone wants to see it end, they're not interested. They're not interested in what should be the easiest emotional thing they've got between two characters in Darby and Moxley. No one cares. You've killed it.
Nobody wants to see it.
No one wants to see it. Orange Cassidy, he's back to his pre-match, zero-hour spots, and you gave him some incredibly bad dialogue that just was a disaster. And, you got your underdog moment and you killed that afterwards. So, yeah, okay. That didn't really lift Orange Cassidy up, did it? It didn't, make him that top babyface that he threatened to be before it was cut off. No, we didn't do that.
Are you feeling overwhelmed by hormonal changes? If you're a woman, you're not alone. With over 1,000 hormone disruptors in our environment, it's no wonder things can feel out of balance. On top of that, natural changes like PMS, menopause, and other life stages can leave you feeling tired, irritable, and trapped in a constant battle with your body. But here's the good news. You don't have to suffer through it. Hormone Harmony by Happy Mammoth is here to help. This herbal formula fine-tunes your hormones, balancing estrogen, testosterone, and even stress hormones like cortisol, which can contribute to weight gain, racing thoughts, poor sleep, and more. With over 40,000 five-star reviews and a bottle selling every 24 seconds, the results speak for themselves. Ready to feel like yourself again? For a limited time, get 15% off your first order at happymammoth.com using code NEXTCHAPTER at checkout. Visit happymammoth.com today and get your old self back naturally.
Your old or broken phone can let you down when you need it most.
Perfect.
But at Verizon, trade in any old phone from our top brands and get the most for it, up to $2,000 in value, for an amazing new iPhone 16 Pro with Apple Intelligence and a new line on My Plan, and iPad and Apple Watch Series 10. That's like a 3-for-1. And you can get it on any plan. At Verizon, trade in your old phone for a brand new iPhone 16 Pro, iPad, and Apple Watch. The other guys won't give you that. Visit Verizon.com today. Additional terms apply. Service plan required for Apple Watch and iPad. Up to $2,000 value based on iPhone, iPad, and Apple Watch.
All you homeowners have unique needs. Some feel the need to paint their door a vibrant shade of blue. Others have the need to decorate their bathroom with fish, anchors, and other nautical items. And because each homeowner has unique needs, Geico helps you get the right coverage for your home and what's in it. That way, you get exactly what's right for you, even if your needs are unique. Get more with Geico.
Jay White, he beats Adam Page twice and we waste it a month later and he's done nothing so far this year and now he's going to have to turn heel. Well done. That was that's sensational. Adam Page, well, you cut him off twice. He became a mute. You killed his heel run. Now he's being rehabbed by MJF. Just think about that. He's being rehabbed because of what you did in part and what other large part. But this program did, whether it's because it's happening or because what you did with it, by MJF. And he's succeeding in a way you didn't. And to be honest, the looking at it and looking at what was done between Moxley and Orange Cassidy and Moxley and Page should have been a massive, big fucking red flag because of the drop in standard from when they had previous programs.
Yeah.
Christian Cage, you gave him more mic time in the four-way build that you pulled him out of than any of the baby faces. And now, you pitch a finish last week and you get rid of the briefcase, which is the right thing to do. Is he in a stronger position? No. Everyone's kind of sick of it. He's been protected all the way through. He can't even, take a loss to Hook when they do a singles match. No one wants to see it. Well done, you've wrapped that up. Adam Copeland, well, you know what? Do you remember that Swerve promo a few weeks ago when he says, when people come to AEW, they get exposed?
Yep.
Yeah, he got exposed. He got exposed for, the way he kind of...
His thought process?
Yeah, his thought process. He's not this genius that people make him out to be. And the fact that, we're protecting these guys too much. People are pointing out now his win-loss kind of record, but also pointing out it's not about win-loss because he'll take losses in tag matches, but it's how he's protected. He doesn't take pins. He's not been pinned by anybody in AEW outside of Christian Cage. And everyone's kind of waking up to it. And they're waking up to what his record was in WWE. And look, whether he wants to, he does some politics or not, he's a nice guy. Everyone says that. His place is not at the top of the card and it's not to be protected like that. You know, yeah, he can do his YouTube numbers anywhere in the card, just like the Hardys did. It's not the right place for him, and all you've done is made half the fan base resent him, and now he's getting booed at your live events. You can't even just say that's the internet. It made its way into its crowd at Collision last night.
And this is where I want to circle back to the stuff about Swerve, right? And this is what I want to talk about, right? You want to say, and this was the defense, you know, it was a late night, it was a long card, you know, those guys did all that crazy stuff in the cage match and everything else, right? That shouldn't be an excuse. That should be a fucking wake-up call. That you have 5 matches underneath this main event that people would have preferred been the main event, that were better, that got the audience more invested, that the audience cared about more, that feature younger guys who are clearly hungry and want to do shit. And instead of like going, okay, you know what? We fucked this up. This isn't a good program. We need to move on. We're going to go back to this. We're going to do the second shittiest match on the fucking card again on Dynamite for a do-over. Why? There's no reason why. And now, because of that, you're taking the build to a Swerve title match that was already the shortest one in the pay-per-view cycle, outside of All Out to All In, and now you're making it even fucking shorter, right? Yep. And Moxley is doing the same fucking thing that Danielson did. He is not going to engage with Swerve in the build to this match. Last night, he attacked Swerve. His promo afterwards was all fucking about Copeland. Mm-hmm. Right? And that part to me pisses me off. And it's one of those things where I'm like, there are times where I just want to take Tony Khan and shake him and be like, dude, why do you want to keep looking backwards? Okay? You have a half dozen guys under 35. You have a fucking dozen guys under 35 that Triple H would give his left ball sack for. Okay? And instead of pushing and promoting them, you're going to go back to fucking Ring of Honor, fucking Danielson. And again, Danielson, greatest wrestler, whatever, yada, yada, yada. We're going to go to Danielson. We're going to go to Copeland. We're going to go to Samoa Joe. We're going to go to all of these guys whose best days have been long behind them. And we're going to let these other guys sit in the back and hope that they're going to kill it on a pay-per-view that's going to be main evented by fucking house show bullshit. Okay? And the same is true, like, God love him, the same is fucking true of Omega versus Okada, right? You're going to do that match again at All In. Fine. Why aren't we showing Kenny with somebody new or somebody interesting? Why are we doing retreads? Like, fucking, like, I don't know. That's the part where I'm just like, why does this promotion refuse to look forward? Because at some point, these fucking guys are going to leave, okay? You think Jay White's going to look at the way he's been handled for the last couple of years and he's going to be like, when time comes to re-up, he's going to be like, yeah, I'm totally here. Like, I know I'm going to get treated right. Like, Tony's going to promise him a fucking Continental Championship run? We can see how well that worked out for Garcia. We can see how well that worked out for Takeshita, right? Like, that's the part that just pisses me off. And, like, Swerve was absolutely fucking dead ass right last night when he stood in that ring and he literally said about Copeland, you are standing in the way of the future. Yeah. Cold as ice, because he fucking is, right? And the same is true about all the shit he said about Mox. Like, it's just, that's the part that was so infuriating about this entire fucking program and this entire fucking main event, is that you had all these younger guys who are ready to kill it. And here's the thing, what are you going to tell them? Don't be good, right? Don't go out there and be good? Like, give me a fucking break. How about you meet what they're doing? Or at least try. You're going to tell me that 2 guys with the level of experience that these guys have can't come up with something, can't listen to the audience or the crowd and how they're fucking dead for the entirety of that match and not try something different or do something? No, let's do our 30-second, 2-minute rest holds, so we can have another incredible, replay of a move that wasn't that good to begin with. I don't know. This just infuriated me.
I think I have 3 parts to this, right? And the first one is, there's lots of people that talk about this being in the home stretch, and it's fine if it puts over Will Ospreay at All In. This story was supposed to get some of the originals back on track. It was supposed to elevate the people that have been looked over, and now it's just going to end up where it did. So what did we get out of it? Nothing. Secondly, I don't see the point in feeding Swerve to him. No. There is no point. You're going to do it on a 2-week build, a direct build, because whatever we started, it's not the focus at the moment. The focus is still on the Copeland rematch. And you've already beaten him twice. What's the point in feeding to him now? And I can see a story element. I can see something where you do something with Paige and Strickland that until they forgive each other, they're not successful, and that's the way that you can potentially get Paige out of the Owen and whatever. But I just don't see it. I don't see the benefit of doing 3 more months of this to get to where you were going to anyway. You know, Ospreay's not someone that needs elevating. he's been, you know, you look at everything that he's booked by, he's been booked like MJF was when he came in. You know, it's all about making him the top guy. They've never deviated from it. They've never done anything. They've not really made any mistakes from it either. So it's like, he doesn't need this, whatever this is, to continue on to do that if that's what you want to do. But so instead, like, why are we feeding Swerve to it? Why are we doing it at Dynasty? And it's like, unless you are switching this, I do not see the value in this. And I damn well don't see the value in kind of advertising Strickland in that belt and then fucking about throwing promo videos around Hangman and stuff and Swerve out if you're not going to do that, because you're going to fall into the same trap that you did last year. The third bit is that I think we're just kind of overexposed to the Blackpool Combat Club and to Moxley as a whole. So I thought about this, and I think about these years since kind of June 2002. You know, between Danielson and Moxley, there's been 17 main events in that period of time, and 8 shows where they've been like the sub pay-per-view draw and a second semi-main, whatever you want to call it. And, you know, he also wins a lot. He's on TV all the time. There is no journey, no direction, no change. You know, obviously his win percent is 79%. There's no journey, there's no change, there's no direction. It's just the character is muddied. He's playing a character for the first time. He doesn't feel authentic, and they've not done anything to change the BCC to feel different, to feel like there's any sort of journey. This is not the Bloodline. There's no Sami Zayn. You know, you can't make Wheeler Yuta Sami Zayn either, and that just looks all a complete mess at the moment. Like, and to be honest, if you did add someone, if you actually had the forego to think about something and do something like that, I don't trust you pivot to it anyway if it worked out, because, you know, you get so locked into something that you can't change. And it's like, this is not that sort of thing. Nobody wants another 3 months of this. No one wants to watch pay-per-views where you watch a great show and then you get that WCW ending on the back. That's not what they want. That's not going to make Will Ospreay, whoever else, that fucking, if he's, you know, wrestling for the belt at All In, it's not going to make anybody. All you're doing is taking something out further than it needs to go when you're not getting any benefit. What are you gaining from this? You know, what is it? There's no, what metric? I don't see a metric or you're gaining. You can't even throw anything at that. You know, you're not getting great heel heat. You know, there's this thing that is, oh, it's great heat. No, it's fucking not. People just,
It's not.
They're dead of it. It's exactly the same as the MJF stuff back in 2023.
My thing is this, right? If you're somebody who's like, I want to wait, let's have Ospreay beat, let's change it up and let's have Ospreay beat Mox at All In. All right, that's what, 3 months from now, 4 months from now. Who do you want to see? I don't want to see Mox face fucking anybody right now. I don't want to see him facing Swerve. I don't want to see him facing, you know, you can look what he did to everybody else. What, Daniel Garcia? Like, you want to see him like it's just going to be an absolute destruction of whoever else, because it's going to be heel heat after heel heat after heel heat. They won't be given an opportunity to give a promo. It's just going to be the same bullshit that you pulled, and they're going to look shitty again. Like, you don't, like, that not, like, that's the main thing for me, is that you look at Moxley and you're like, well, is there anybody that I'd want to see face him? And the answer is no. I don't. And not this Moxley, and not at the main angle like this, because it's just dead.
You know, we got a comment from you from the notes from Chris, and I think it's absolutely like the most important thing. And he said, you know, the ironic thing is that everyone who is getting hot right now, Swerve, Hangman, MJF, Will, Kenny, Take, Carl, etc., did it by working with each other and not by being mixed in with this mock stuff. Meanwhile, everyone in the mix of the mock stuff is coming out colder and colder, which is funny when you think about the alleged goal of that program was to heat up young baby faces. The guys in the tier below that top that you always talk about are getting results, and the overexposed guys are not. And that was evident from live reactions at the pay-per-view. There are a group of people that know how they want to succeed, and they know it's by working together on the underneath. They know it's not by doing this old kind of worn out kind of long story that's not achieved anything and continues to not achieve anything. In fact, it's continuing to achieve less. You know, you got your supposed strong baby face booed. Well done.
That to me last night should have been a giant fucking wake-up call. Swerve said Cope's name was complimentary towards Cope, and the fucking crowd booed. Okay? That's brutal.
Yep, you got what you deserved. you know, and let's be honest about it, you know, they played games for this. They got the spot they wanted. And, yeah, you failed. And I think at some point you have to look at it and realise you failed, you know, and stop talking about, oh, look at all the heat I'm getting in buildings, because it's not there. Like, there wasn't any heat. You know,
there wasn't
a huge reaction to anything last night when he was brought up. You know, and that should be the kind of the real thing that you kind of realise. And, you know, stop trying to play Roman Reigns, you know, stop trying to be Seth Rollins. You're not, like, you're supposed to be Jon Moxley. Who is Jon Moxley now? And you need to think about that. And you probably need to, you know, someone needs to make that call. And they need to make that call because, you know, you've got a stadium to sell out in Texas. And, you know, you're at 12,000 now. You know, you want to be upwards of 20. Like, is there anything versus this Jon Moxley at the moment that I think is going to sell that much?
No.
And I can think of, you know, other matches that, you know, because this is all going to be in short build. You look at Double, I think it's like 6 week. But I can think of many other matches that could fit better than whatever this is. And I think you need to look at, what do you want to be as a promotion? Are you now a nostalgia promotion? Are you playing TNA? Like, is that who you are? And also, you know, there needs to be a change in the guard. Moxley has been incredible for this company since he came in, but creatively since, you know, pretty much all of last year, really. He's lost something. He's lacking. There's something missing. And he needs to figure out, and figuring out was not throwing the world title at him and undermining everything that was good going on at the time. And I think we've seen the repercussions of that. And that's why it's the only thing on the show that is so incredibly frustrating right now when you see so much kind of
There's so much good stuff. There's so much good stuff. This is so different than some of the shows we did. Like, look at January and how bleak that fucking shit was, right? They turned it around. They had a phenomenal February. The shows were good and interesting. It led to a fantastic fucking pay-per-view, right? And a lot of that had to do with the way that they handled, like, they downplayed a lot of the Mox Cope shit because it was so fucking shitty. They got rid of FTR.
It's funny, they're still downplaying it in a way because it had like 2 minutes on Dynamite this week.
Right.
The world title, the week after a pay-per-view, had 2 minutes to build up a rematch for the world title next week. She only reminded me of, actually, was, you remember after Cole and Paige's match at Revolution, and they did really little short segments into the rematch at Rampage because they wanted him to get a final win before he dropped the belt to CM Punk? That's what this feels like. Like, Tony doesn't care about it. It feels like Tony doesn't care about it. Like, nobody cares about it.
Nobody gives a shit about this. Nobody's talking about this. Nobody looks at, have you ever heard anybody be like, oh, I'm so excited. Okay, I could point to one person. Whoa, I'm so excited about Mox. I'm so excited about Cope. Like, these guys are great. Like, dude, like that whole thing where it was like, and then the bell rang, right? Like, we didn't even get to that.
No, we didn't. But it's that thing where now you look at it and you're like, you need to pivot. And I don't, you know, and someone said to me the other day, why are you even pushing that? You probably have more chance if you push for, you know, Page to face Moxley. I don't care about that. I just care about the fact that they need to pivot. This is not good. It's going into WrestleMania season. That's always a big challenge for them as well, because unfortunately you are affected by competition. And leaving this thing on top all the way to stadium is the completely wrong message to send to your fan base. It's completely the wrong message to send to your wrestlers.
Put the fucking belt on Swerve at Dynasty.
Yeah, just
like,
get it done.
Put the belt on Swerve and Dynasty. Just do it. You can tell, like, look at what Swerve has accomplished over the last fucking year and beyond that. And tell me that man can't make shit out of Shinola, okay? The guy can do amazing stuff. Give him the belt. Let him work his magic. He'll fucking do an incredible, you need to be a heel turn? He'll do a fantastic fucking heel turn because you want to do Ospreay? Fine. Like, he'll do an absolutely fantastic fucking job. And, like, look at, like, Ospreay, some of the best feud Ospreay had in the last year, without, the Fletcher stuff was good, but was also fucking Swerve, which was, again, on a really short build, right? And it was a face-face matchup. So, like, let these fucking guys go. Like, I don't know. I don't know how you look at the incredible number of younger wrestlers you have and say, we should go to the senior citizens home and engage with, like, you know, fucking Copeland. Like, the shit this guy, the delusion of this guy from that Sports Illustrated interview. Like, what the fuck was this? Like, dude.
Funny.
Oh my God. Like, I don't know. I'm just over it. And it, like I don't want to spend too much time on the negativity because the freaking pay-per-view was absolutely incredible. Like, absolutely incredible. And, you know, there should be no excuses for that main event. Like, you guys know that fucking sucked. right? Like, look yourselves in the mirror and tell me that you know that sucked. It sucked. The audience didn't give a shit. It sucked. The most excited that audience was when Swerve showed up. They went berserk for that, okay? You know it wasn't
good. I knew that. It wouldn't be doing this match next week if it didn't. But that's now ego. That just feels like an ego thing as well. Because we have 4 weeks to build this Dynasty match, and now it's going to be 2. For what? Because you didn't deliver where you should have done. Because you couldn't. Because you took a spot you shouldn't have had.
Pretty much.
Anyway, right, enough. Put the belt on Swerve. Move on. Get over it. Yeah, there's much more interesting things to be done in that than there is keeping it like this. And I don't find the prospect of Samoa Joe matchup or anything else to change my mind on that. And damn well don't feed anyone else to him, because I'm amazed that this is happening. It wasn't something they were looking at, doing Swerve and Moxley quite recently, so it's quite of a switch. I'm quite intrigued as to why, but yeah, just get it done. Just get it done. It'll be better for your promotion in the long haul. So there you are. WWE.
WWE. So WWE had the big heel turn at Elimination Chamber, and then John Cena disappeared, and The Rock disappeared, and we have not seen either of them.
Which we said was going to happen. We said was going to happen.
So Raw did manage to do what has seemed like the impossible, and managed to have a post-Elimination Chamber Cena heel turn, not Elimination Chamber, Royal Rumble.
No, Elimination Chamber.
Was the Elimination Chamber? I can't keep these fucking pay-per-views straight. They had a bump off of Cena's heel turn. They actually had their ratings go up for the first time since they went to Netflix, as opposed to the dropping that they've been doing since then. Cody Rhodes was also off TV for a short period of time, selling his betrayal and the punctured eardrum that he got from Travis Scott. Trish...
Yep.
Cena's going to show up, is it this week in Brussels?
Yes. Yeah. So they've put him on this week. I think it's because this is the first Raw that will be broadcast globally on European time. So it will be brought by its locality. So the idea is that whenever they do a show in a market abroad, they will broadcast the show live. So this one will come live from Brussels, and because it's all on Netflix primarily, for live showing, it will be completely live, as opposed to Friday, which was live on Netflix for anyone that has SmackDown on Netflix, but was on tape delay for USA, which is unusual because if you think about the AEW deal with WBD, it has to air on TV first, so it has to be on WBD in the US before it can be shown anywhere else. So it's kind of interesting that they basically have a priority in their deal for Netflix than USA, considering how much money USA are paying as well. But yeah, I think that's why they put Cena onto this one at first. It'll be interesting to see if that makes a difference. Yeah, they jumped to 3.1 million from 2.6 million global views between the February 24th and the first one in March. And yeah, that's, we're still talking a long way. They debuted on Netflix at 5.9 million global views. Yeah. So we have seen that huge fall away. And, this was an interesting one because the Chamber only did less than 2.1 million views, which was kind of surprising. It didn't make the top 10, especially with how much kind of build there was for that angle. And then, we see an uptake and we're also okay. But it's how long that lasts. And I think that's where this one coming up is kind of really interesting number to see how much interest there is in the Cena thing. And then how they go post-Mania. Because, this is their big period. This is the ones where they should be hitting numbers. Yeah. And both, Brandon First and Dave Meltzer have, with their estimates, show, less viewership in general than what they were receiving on USA. And how does that now relate as we go forward? The other thing with that is there's kind of been a couple of weird things happening. So we're seeing some real big kind of ticket differentiations between Raw and SmackDown. Yeah. And that's where it's confusing. So you look at SmackDown, and SmackDown's 3-hour average is pretty good on USA on a Friday night. And Raw looks like it's struggling more. But then when you compare it to tickets, you've got this real differentiation. So in Q1, Raw has spiked this year to an average of 14.1K per show compared to 11.4K last year. And then SmackDown has only gone up by 0.2. So, so from 11,200 to 11,400. So there's a real differentiation in that, and that feels weird compared to the ratings below. But I wonder if that's because it's concentrated in 18 to 34. Because most of these ticket buyers are late ticket buyers. They're getting huge uplifts in the last few weeks. And in general, late ticket buyers, take out your big demand shows like your Taylor Swift and that sort of thing. But in general, your late ticket buyers tend to come from your younger part of your audience. And those are more likely to be your Netflix watchers as well. So that is what I wonder about. And I don't know how much it works internationally. We're not seeing the same kind of uptake for the European show so far, looking at numbers, that we've been seeing in the US. So, they're having to reduce them by a lot kind of greater degree. We saw, Barcelona on Friday was down to €45 a ticket, which feels unheard of for TV and WWE as of late. So it's a case of how long that lasts for, and if that is a spike that continues. But it's interesting as well, because as much as they'll look at it in Raw's having the bigger houses, if you're a wrestler, I feel like you might want to be on SmackDown more like The Rock did, because you can still measure your impact and show your impact. So if you're on Raw now, you're just part of this 2.6 million views of this number, and it's hard to break down. We still don't really have a measurement on it, and you don't get quarter hours, so you can't brag about your quarter hours or use them to bully people or whatever. Whereas The Rock can turn up on SmackDown, do the 10 o'clock quarter hour, generate a rating, promote that everywhere, show that and use it for his power, and the same with the quarter hours and sort of thing. So it's kind of interesting that you have this kind of dichotomy between you want to be on Raw for the bigger crowds and obviously like the younger viewership, and being involved with Netflix is a huge thing. But then on the other side, like, you don't have as much personal kind of things to go on because it's not as measurable, and you can't shout about it as much. So that's kind of been interesting. But the other thing that has been around The Rock is how the Cena heel turn came about. So there was a tweet, as we referenced at the start of this show.
There was a tweet. There was quite the tweet from our dear friend Dave Meltzer.
Yeah, so there was a tweet that we referenced at the start of the show. So if you didn't get my joke and you're like, what the fuck are you doing now? That's 2 skits in like 4 weeks. Stop it. It came from this tweet. So this was a tweet and delete from Dave Meltzer. And it said, the motivation is that Dwayne wanted Cody, brackets legit, and I know that as a fact because a mutual friend last week mentioned the politics, as Levesque absolutely thought it was a terrible idea. But in a fight with Dwayne, with Nick Khan as an arbiter, he loses every time. However, several convinced Cody to simply refuse, so art was a lot like life this time. Dwayne wouldn't go after Cody politically, so he let it go. Cena was a second choice and Cena was fine with it. Punk was never asked. Dave would go on to claim that there was a pitch for Cena to turn at WrestleMania. He linked it to being changed on the day of Elimination Chamber to the change in the run sheets, which I think Fightful denied. However, Wade Keller did confirm that it was a serious pitch for Cena to turn at WrestleMania. So the main details are correct in terms of, Cody was approached first. Cody said no, he has the political power to. Paul Levesque didn't have the political power to change it. They went to Cena. Cena agreed. There was a pitch for him to turn at WrestleMania, but they agreed to turn it at Elimination Chamber. I think that's the kind of bits that people agree on. Everything else is kind of there. So I've got 3 questions for you on this. So, first of all, what does it say about Cody's power and leverage that he was able, that The Rock was able to be turned down by him and that he wouldn't go after Cody?
I think it shows that Cody has some security there. And I think it shows that Cody also was very smart last year in how he played his cards in terms of publicizing the way that the whole, I'm going to give you my... and you could see this from Brian Jurwitz at one point. We gave an interview that sort of hinted at that, right? Where he was like, Cody's out there with this sad sack face doing something that we didn't agree to, right? Looking like fucking Charlie Brown. So you can definitely see that Cody has a lot of power. What I found interesting in that was that Cody seemed to have almost more power than Triple H. In the way that kind of thing was set up. Like Triple H wasn't going to win against The Rock, but Cody could, right? That part I was like,
I think it makes sense because, Cody's your chief top babyface there. He is the guy. He is the guy they build around. He's the guy they merchandise most. He is the guy on the front of every bit of marketing that they do. When you'd think it would be Roman, but now it's Cody Rhodes. And that's not to downplay Roman's political power. And I think we've seen
he has a lot, yes.
And I think we've seen plenty of episodes of that so far this year. But, this is Cody's company in terms of talent. It's his role to be that lead guy. And I think what happened last year illustrated to them that he couldn't be pushed around in the way that others could. And you couldn't get away with it in terms of the fan base. And I think it bruised Rock's ego. I think half of this is because it bruised his ego that they rejected him for Cody, but then also that brought him a little bit of respect as well in the way that there probably isn't for Paul Levesque. Because you look at it, if you're going to dispose of one or the other at the moment, Levesque is far more disposable than Cody. And that's kind of an interesting position for us to be in with WWE in 2025. You've kind of skipped my Hunter's Power question, so already.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine. But the other question I had was, when you look at the idea, the Rock's team, so whether it was Brian or The Rock or whoever, went with the primary idea to get Cody Rhodes to turn. What do you think that says about their team's kind of thinking and ideas and how kind of reflective it is on how they think about wrestling compared to how most people do in 2025?
I think that you have to kind of approach this less from an angle of what's good for wrestling and think about it from like what's good for The Rock, right? Mm-hmm. And I think in this, The Rock wanted Cody. I don't know for shit. My guess would be that he wanted Cody Rhodes to turn because then he would be the number one babyface, right? Or could position himself in that role and wouldn't have to worry about the audience turning on him the way they did last year, or at least that was something he's thinking about. And also, if Cody's power in WWE is built on him being the number one babyface, then you can negate that power by turning him heel.
Yeah, no, they're really good points. And, even this is disruptive because you then turn John Cena heel, which I don't think is a bad decision in terms of this program.
No.
But for it to be kind of fully work, you want Cody to then chase him. So you're going to make him champion. So if you've promised, say, a Drew McIntyre who was moved to SmackDown thinking he was going to have a Cody program, that's gone now. You're a heel. So this is going to be, if Cena has that belt, then, you fall to the wayside in that aspect. So it's about how disruptive it is, these decisions, these late decisions, how long-term, how disruptive they are. And with The Rock, he wants so badly to be a babyface to this audience.
Yes.
To the point where he's out doing his press conferences where he completely exposes the business. Never mind an actress saying one thing on TV. You've got The Rock going, I'm a great guy. Look at this character I'm playing. Look at this story we're telling. Isn't it amazing? And we're a TKO product and WWE isn't the high point of the hierarchy and all this stuff. And it's like, that's so damaging in the long run just because you want people to like you. And it feels so strange that you're so insecure with who you are. Give The Rock. But you carry this insecurity about, the place where you begun kind of a lot of your career. And I don't know how helpful that is overall and in the long term. So they're always going to be chasing short-term wins now, Yes. And I think one thing they do, mention the attendance as well, is the one thing they do with that is probably notable, especially with Raw, is every show kind of has a big main event or something that's attractive to a late ticket buyer. And that's where you're chasing that number, that increase every single time. In fact, to be honest, sometimes AEW could do with some of that because you look at that card for Wednesday, and it's not to say it was a bad card for Dynamite, but if you look at the star power in front of the crowd, most of them were missing. Yep. So they didn't deliver anything that would make you, as a late ticket buyer, run to buy a ticket. And that's something that Raw does. But yeah, they've turned into having to kind of chase these kind of short-term wins constantly. And there was a suggestion that this is a kind of a fallback because of what's happening to the Netflix numbers. But the other thing that's happening is that they are becoming a more TKO product. And everything that's going on with TKO is impacting, feels like, far more on the presentation of these shows than ever before. And you can see it with the way they're set up and what they advertise and what they're bringing in. But also, you know, you've got everything else that's going on. So you've got the starting of the kind of TKO boxing relationship, and that being a Nick Khan project alongside Dana White and the Saudis. And then you've got kind of everything becoming more politically exposed and more tied to kind of the Trump administration. And that's risky to me. I think it's very much risky because there's two things. So your concentration seems to be on everything else but your own products. And it makes me wonder how long you can continue to do that and to be successful. And then secondly, it's kind of you're tying yourself to administration that is losing popularity as it is, but depending what happens, you know, you might be successful from it. It might be that, you know, you gain lots from it, but your base, especially for WWE, you know, as much as it's more rural orientated than AEW is still largely built up in kind of very kind of left-leaning liberal areas in big cities. So how much risk are you taking by being a TKO product?
Well, I think you also have to look at, like, you know, discussions like, geez, the Elimination Chamber didn't chart internationally at any high level.
What do you mean? Do you mean it's not going to be this cultural phenomenon that changes the world and expression of American culture?
I hope not. I hope not. But you can also see the ways in which TKO TKO has already got UFC, and they've got Donald Trump showing up all the time to get filleted on television. You know, Dana White's now leaned into being a big supporter of the Tate brothers, who, you know, even Republicans are like, what the fuck are these guys? Like that's been a turnoff to, like, right wingers, right? Mm-hmm. You've got Andrew Schultz showing up on Raw. You know, he's one of those, you know, it's wokeness that's killed comedy, bullshit assholes, right? Like, you're really pushing the bounds of, like, how the company is engaging with politics in a way that, like you said, could be very risky, and especially risky if you're looking at expanding or trying to grow internationally, right? Like, some of these things are not popular right now in other parts of the world. So, you know, anything is possible. You're going to see what happens, but like we talked about this week. I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility that fucking Donald Trump shows up at WrestleMania, right? Yeah. Like, and there's a lot of younger people who started getting into WWE because of TikTok, because of, like, its reach, that you sort of wonder, like, if they're sort of presented with this as obviously as you want to do it, or maybe you think about you want to do it, you know, are you going to be able to sustain that level of success, right? So I don't know. You'd like to think they wouldn't. I have been sadly disappointed in my country for quite a while now, so maybe nothing will happen. But they're making some choices here, and
it's a risk.
It's a risk. It could backfire, then it might not.
And, you know, they've got a lot of business kind of coming up as TKO as a group. So, you know, the UFC deal is upcoming. The Peacock deal is upcoming. You know, UFC is expected to go to Netflix. What did you hear this weekend of the rumors around UFC, actually?
Yeah, so I ended up down a rabbit hole where I watched one of the New York Post MMA reporters talk about UFC and the relationship between UFC and ESPN, which appears to have deteriorated significantly. Mm-hmm. It pointed out that there's almost no UFC content on ESPN's television channel. Most everything is on ESPN Plus. And there was a discussion about the amount of pay-per-views. I think ESPN has a guaranteed that they're essentially buying 300,000 purchases of, or they're guaranteeing 300,000 purchases in the amount of money that they pay to TKO for the UFC, but there's no way in hell they're getting 300,000 purchases. And there was some discussion that even the fighters are seeing less bonuses because some of their bonuses are based off of the number of pay-per-views purchased, and they're not existing. So the fighters' pay has even gone down more than it was. So the discussion today, his best guess, and I have to look up this guy's name because I feel bad not even saying it. His best guess was that he believed that TKO was going to take UFC to Netflix, that Netflix would become the exclusive home of UFC, and that it would not be on a pay-per-view model, but he believed there would be like an additional tier purchase, right? So you would be able to purchase the UFC tier from Netflix for whatever cost, either above or beyond your regular Netflix purchase, and that would include all UFC content. And that kind of had me thinking, because I'm like, that would probably be something that WWE I could see wanting, right? A WWE tier, where like if you have a regular Netflix tier, you can get WWE television shows, but in order to get those pay-per-views, you'd have to pay an additional amount of money for a WWE pay-per-view tier, right? But but who knows whether that's going to be the case. But he seemed to sort of be indicating that the relationship between UFC and ESPN is basically broken down, and they're still in their exclusive negotiating window. The UFC rights, ESPN's rights to UFC expire at the end of this year, so they'll be in a new home in January 26th. He did not think, and that was something that's come up, was that WBD might bid on part of the USC package, right? That they would split the package the way they've split some of these sports packages. He was pretty emphatic that he believed that the whole thing would go to Netflix and they would not break it apart. There'd be nothing on Amazon. There'd be nothing on WBD. It would go as one thing. And that, considering that we also heard that TKO was talking about Netflix wanting Netflix to have the pay-per-view rights that Peacock currently has to the PLEs, that's putting a lot of eggs in a Netflix basket. Like if you're TKO, you're putting pretty much everything with Netflix right now, which, and I always thought that was interesting, because the comment that came out about like we're going to get more eyeballs if we go to Netflix, which hasn't been the case for Raw. So I'm kind of like, I don't know. That's kind of the gist of what I had heard.
Yeah. Well, it's that thing, isn't it? So something like a UFC pay-per-view is enough of a destination that it may work in that aspect on Netflix. The same way like the Jake Paul and Mike Tyson stuff did, or we'll see what happens with the upcoming Katie Taylor fight, which is happening because, that drew on its own. The viewership was so high for that they think they can run that as a separate card, which is another lesson in multiple things in a show drawing things, right? But no, so I think that is enough of a destination. And in a way, what's perplexing is that Netflix went to Raw for Raw in the first place, because, they've got some of their kind of higher ups talking about how they're not really interested in weekly sports or programming. So, looking for American football or looking for other sports, they're not so interested in the week to week. They want either the special weekends, so like they'll have the Christmas NFL,
yep,
or they want kind of the end. They want the big events. And you think about WWE, and I think what we're seeing is they now have this constant need to make every single Raw a destination show, because it doesn't have that longevity as a destination thing by itself. There were so many people that were used to turning on USA 8 p.m. Well, that's now gone. So you don't have that reminder. So what is it that makes it a destination enough that you're going to turn Netflix on every week? And that's different from something like a WrestleMania or a SummerSlam, where you're going to see that date and go, like a boxing match, I'm going to, we need to watch that big show. So it's kind of interesting that they went for that and not for the kind of PLE model first. And maybe it's just they are kind of using it as like, a learning curve to expand their kind of live operation. So they're used to producing that live content on a much more regular basis, like a guinea pig in a sense. Very expensive guinea pig.
Yeah.
But maybe that is what it is. But I don't think we are seeing Raw in itself as a live destination show in a way that they maybe thought they would.
It's very interesting, and I think that I'm really curious about the European shows and how these perform, and the idea that like the European audience is going to be so excited to watch Raw live that they'll make up for the American audience not watching it. Because I think one of the things that's true about Netflix is that there's this sort of mental thing where Netflix is destination programming, where it's like I don't have to watch anything right now. right? Like, it's not got that sense that live TV does for wrestling, where it's like, oh, it's on, I'm going to put it on, it's on, right? You go to Netflix to binge things. You go to Netflix to watch a bunch of shit at once.
God, I watched 12 episodes of Drive to Survive this week.
Right.
You know?
Like, I think that I think there's something to be said for the medium also impacting the way you view the programming. Like, by its nature, Raw being on Netflix means that for some people, it will be less of an appointment viewing type thing of like, I'm going to sit down on Monday night and watch Raw. It's like, oh, well, I'll get to it when I get to it. And if you don't hear anything exciting about the card, it's easy to skip it, right? I don't know. I think there's a lot of reasons why Raw hasn't done well. I think the people who talked about the Netflix being, there was a lot of conventional wisdom that they were going to do really well. I think you and I kind of had no idea, and we're happy to say we didn't know. Like, we didn't know at the time. I think both of us are sort of shocked that they're doing as poorly as they are. But it's I don't know. It's very interesting. Like you said, this is right in the middle of WrestleMania season. This should be when they are at their hottest. If this is the numbers they're pulling now, like, you hate to think of what the fucking stuff they're going to be doing in June. But
it's kind of weird how like cycles repeat themselves, because some of it is kind of very similar to what happened when they launched the WWE Network. And they talked about having 1 million viewers and then growing to 2 million. And actually, they were struggling. They couldn't get to 1 million. They were struggling in that aspect. So there's like this overestimation of what that programming means as a destination. And I think it helps, when you're on Peacock and then you get the growth of that median, and then, with big events like the Olympics and everything else being on there, then having your product on there, it lifts it up. But I don't know, and we've talked about how little you see advertising unless you see, unless you've watched that product on Netflix. I don't know how much that would change. And yeah, they would have to have a tier. I don't think they can run pay-per-view. I don't think they have that capacity, similar to what WBD don't have with Max at the moment.
And they don't seem to want to either with Netflix.
No.
Like you said, they don't want that regular
They could have done it with the Jake Paul and Mike Tyson thing, and they didn't.
Right.
They want, the idea is to, they want you to sign up for these things. And then the other idea of having something like Raw that's been spoke about is trying to, prevent the churn. So you don't just turn on, watch your 12 episodes of whatever program it is and then turn it off. But I think that they will eventually, I think they're going to move to more of an Amazon model, where Amazon they pick up just destination programming and a little bit of everything. So it's enough to keep you. And obviously Netflix has a harder job because Amazon's linked into their distribution with the shopping distribution, everything else that's involved. But they will put in enough to keep you there and subscribing kind of each time, but without having everything of everything. And, this is why this whole thing with UFC and everything going to TKO going there feels such like a difference from the way everybody's speaking in that part of streaming. That you were going to have everything and they want to own everything, and that's great. But, I don't think there's the kind of energy or the wish to consume everything. And I think that's becoming more and more of a thing. And as we go forward, the value of TV, as wrestling TV shows as a concept, is going to be interesting, because it will be the big shows that have all the focus, I think, and that will become, this destination viewing is a thing that's happening everywhere. You don't go to loads of little gigs. People want to go to a stadium show. It's just like a cultural thing that's kind of impacting more and more and more. And that's where, when you talked about loyalty earlier with the AEW numbers, that can be important, because you can show that you are differentiating from that kind of cultural kind of swing that's going on. That's gone quite deep. I didn't mean to.
No, but I think it's kind of interesting, and I think, I should point out here that Eric Richter is the name of the journalist who
the New York Post,
the New York Post, so I apologize for not doing that earlier. I think it says something about like where TKO is and what their thought process is and some of the choices that they're making. Again, all of these things might end up working out really, 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 really well for them, but so far as we've seen, Raw on Netflix has not maybe worked out as well. Like it's let's figure out where we're like, let's see how this goes,
Let's see where we are in a year, and they have to see where they are in 5 years, because that's when Netflix have the loophole if they do want to drop it for anything else. But it's an interesting one. It's an interesting kind of collaboration, and I think they've got another live show going up each week now as well on Netflix, so they are expanding their live content. But it isn't, you're right, it isn't traditionally how people watch and consume that product. So we shall see. Do I have anything else I wish to add at this point? New Japan Cup's coming towards an end. I think next time we'll talk a little bit about how Goto has done and his reign, and when we'll know the challenger for Sakura Genesis, whether it's time for him to drop that belt or not. But I think he's been a massive surprise in terms of his drawing power. He's fulfilled everything we've wanted him to do as an in-ring. This is not a gold watch run. This is something to set up things for the immediate and the next couple of years. And I think there's a story to be told about Japan's numbers this year, and whether the COVID bounce that everybody else got when they come out of COVID, they didn't really have a closure, but everything was kind of a longer tail. Yes. And whether we're now seeing the changes, now we're seeing so much retirements and that sort of thing, and this static top that stayed stagnant because you wanted to use your top drawers in order to keep yourself afloat when you're a live event business is now starting to move. And I think that change in a lot of companies that we're seeing, and new people at the top, and new kind of stories to kind of invest into, and then to celebrate people ending their careers, is a combination that's kind of leading to a big uptick across the Japanese promotions. But I think that's something for next time ahead of Sakura Genesis. So Goto, who would have thought? Do you know what? I check the every Monday I check the New Japan top ranking merchandise sales, and he gets in there. It's not just Tetsuya Naito this week, it's like it's more Goto. Well done, lad. But yeah, I thought this...
I know you...
Go on.
I'm sorry, I was going to say, I know you saw the new Tendedero t-shirt. Immediate purchase for Trish.
Yeah, I ordered one. I'm going to ship it this afternoon.
I should get one, and we can wear them whenever we go to shows together, and people can be like, is that like not our own merch? It's the Tendedero t-shirt will be the thing that
it's like Disney adult, like Disney couples. Yeah,
who are those two fucking idiots? Oh.
I'm gonna order you one. It'll get delivered to 10. So 10. So if
Trish and Sarah,
Trish and Sarah Tendedero. Yeah, we have to Tendedero people then and shout Tendedero. We have to do the whole thing. It's a gimmick now. It's like a whole gimmick. The Tendedero gimmick. That's the gimmick of this podcast. Tendedero.
Okay, except I'm the clear Naito in this situation because I don't know that I agreed to this.
I was wondering where you were going. I was going to go. You were saying I'm insane. Are you saying you have no knees, so you can't see?
I definitely have no knees. I'll tell you that right now.
I was like, well, what is... I don't have any cats. I have rabbits. I guess that's a replacement for Hiromu's cats. But yeah, I don't know. But yeah, no, I'll order you one. We should do that. That would be funny. By the way, if you ever import, for anybody that ever wants to import anything from Japan, Japanese wrestling merchandise, get onto Tenzo. They will ship everything as one package. It's much cheaper, much more efficient, and it gets here real quick. So there you go. There's a fake advertisement for something, but actually it's a really good service, and it's going to save you so much more money, and the quality is going to be so much better than ordering from sites in the US that sell similar. I'm trying to be nice. But yeah,
you're doing a good job.
You got to do that. Tenzo's a game changer. I tell you, I order so much shit. But yes, Tendedero shirt. Thank you for pointing that out.
Tendedero, indeed.
Tendedero. Yes, they're facing. It looks like Cobb and Newman, and Cobb. Cobb's an interesting story because I know. I think Joe Lanza even put out yesterday, and I've heard this as well, is that there are some talent that think all the rumours are coming from him, but the WWE rumours have been around for a long time now. Whether he's listed on their internal roster, it sounds, he has his family live in Fukuoka at the bottom of Japan. He's got kids enrolled in school there, and so it's a big move if he is going to move, but obviously, we all know the kind of situation, his age and the yen and everything else. So I think we've got probably to Dontaku before anything is kind of sorted out from what I'm hearing. And obviously they're setting up a tag match for Sakura Genesis now. So that's the kind of latest on that one. All right.
Listen, the silver lining to Cobb going to WWE would be the absolute insane crash out that Bronson Reed would have almost immediately.
That's it. He's getting tag teamed. Sorry, they're in a tag team. That's how that's going to go.
Well, of course.
And to be honest, Cobb, he's great in his role in New Japan, but he's been there a very long time. He has a ceiling on him, and I don't see him moving anyone else kind of moving anywhere up. United Empire are very much another faction that needs to be kind of changed up or removed, same way that we've just done with Hontai and Chaos. And yeah, they need to do that because that faction's kind of dying and has no kind of need to be there at the moment. So yeah, I don't think it would be a bad move for him, and it would free up more space on a New Japan roster, let's be honest. The more opportunities for some of these younger guys coming through at the moment, the better, and that's what's going to regenerate New Japan, as much as you don't want to say that about any talent we're staying there. So I don't think there's a loser in this situation. I don't think anyone loses out no matter what decision he makes here. Maybe his pocket, actually. But yeah, that's kind of the latest that we've heard on that, as well as on top of what others have heard. Thank you to our friends in Japan. Right. I think I've warbled the last 10 minutes because we got into a huge Tendadero chat, and that disrupted everything. But yeah, this has been the Trish and Sarah Wrestling Podcast. We are produced by the wonderful Leah of Tunnel Talk, who does an incredible job at putting everything together for us.
Yes.
Tunnel Talk plug. Tunnel Talk drops new episodes every Sunday, only on the Social Suplex Network.
That was spectacular. I loved the voice. I'm really excited for you to listen, because they had some spectacular stuff on MJF today, and MJF Excellent. And Hangman that I think you will especially love. But I strongly want to recommend the Best Bodies tournament is currently going on and has been going on for the last few weeks. And today was a devastating bracket busting. I know.
You better not have taken Swerve out on that side. You better not have taken Swerve out.
It was Swerve versus Ospreay was the matchup that we had
my
today. God.
No, don't do that. Don't answer to me. I'm gonna refute on my comments if you've taken Swerve out. You wait. We'll go to that later.
Swerve versus Ospreay was brutal. Orange Cassidy versus Chuck Taylor was a hellscape nightmare, and Hangman versus Matt Jackson also brutal.
Oh, we've gone to that side again. All right, okay. Because I was listening last week. We had the little cow Matt Jackson discussion. Yeah. And the hair, the Hangman Jack Perry hair, I enjoyed that, and how Jack. I like. Yeah, did you the last? This is a complete Tunnel Talk meltdown now, like discussion.
It's fine. It's fine. We're gonna fangirl over our podcast. Yeah. It's our favorite podcast.
It's fine. The best bit was like Jack Perry being need to be left in a cellar and coming out after 10 years. He's matured. And he can be.
I had a whole breakdown today because Tunnel Talk is big fans of what Max Caster is doing currently, which I think is great and it should be. But I also kind of enjoy the fact that Brian Alvarez hates what Matt Jackson is doing currently. And I want to have like a debate where Tunnel Talk and Brian Alvarez have to like fight over who gets to prove which one is doing better. Like you know what I mean? Show your work. Like, why does it suck? Why is it great? I feel like that would be a spectacular hour of audio. An hour. I'm putting arbitrary time limits on it.
Brian can be a hard guy to pin down. He has a lot of commitments, but that might actually be quite funny to do. We'll think about that. All right. Let's finish this outro before.
Anyway, listen to Tunnel Talk. It's good.
Yes, it's good. Unless you've ditched Swerve, and then I'll reject that. Anyway. Yeah, Tunnel Talk on the Social Suplex Network, where you can also find All Things Elite, Keeping It Strong Style, Imps, WWE Adventure, Wrestling Art with Chris Fings, and the AEW Match Guide. While you're listening on your favourite podcast platform, why not join our Discord, where you can interact with all our hosts and other wrestling fans. You can also contact us if you wish, if you have any questions, anything else, I don't know. Want to shout Tendadero, did a lot. You can find us at trishandsarahpod@gmail.com, trishandsarahpod@gmail.com, on Twitter at Trish and Sarah, or on Blue Sky, either our own acronyms. Please come and say hello and give us your feedback. You can also find us on the board on a thread, if one likes to do that. I quite enjoy reading all that. No one still always seems to work out the Sarah, so you can do that too. Lastly as well, so... This is Talking the Social Suplex Network. We've got a new project launching next week as we look to develop the written side of our network. So we are launching our own newsletter that will feature modern and retro content and features people from inside our network, as well as some of the very best writers that we can find from outside of it that don't work for paywalled wrestling providers. This won't be provided behind a paywall, therefore, and it will be free to access for everyone as we look to provide truly global coverage without the need for aggregation, because we all know how much I fucking hate aggregation. Apart from Andrew Thompson at the Post, he's great. I respect what you do. But in general, I hate aggregation. But look, we're not looking to be the tortured observer or fight for to impact on any of them in this way. This is our platform to, this is our way to platform a diverse group of writers who aren't restricted by having to gain clicks in what they can write about, and doing something to tackle the scourge of kind of misinformation is a constant threat at this time, and that is something that I'm very passionate about. And the more information that we can provide to people on an open platform, the more we shut down the gaps for kind of ridiculous commentary or numbers or YouTubers. And I went to see the newsagents on Wednesday. I got to see Emily Maitlis. I was very excited. Susie fawned all over Lewis Goodenough. I fawned over her all night. It was great. But, the way that they talk about making information available in kind of a cumulative form and at your fingertips is really important. So, it's just a little thing. I want to thank everyone that stepped up to support so far, that we're just going to be producing kind of on a bi-weekly basis to try and put more information out there that's, with good context and good content and something different, a different offering in a cumulative setting. So if you want to check in with us, we'll be advertising that in the coming week.
Yes.
See how it goes. Let's change things up a little bit. So, that's hard for me to do, actually. I did like a full spiel there. That was too much. But no, it's important, and we want it to be something different. So it's time to do so. We're back in 2 weeks. We're going to be the week before Secure Genesis, before Dynasty. My God, we'll be pretty quick coming up. So that is when we will return. And until then, I've been Trish.
I've been Sarah.
And this has been the Trish and Sarah Wrestling Podcast. Thank you for listening.
What is Dax, are you?
Tracking all our cars on Carvana Value Tracker on all our devices? Yes, Kristen, yes I am.
Well, I've been looking for my phone for...
In Dax's domain, we see all. So we always know what our cars are worth.
All of them?
All of them. Value surge, trucks up 3.9%.
That's a great offer.
I know. Sell?
Sell.
Track your car's value with Carvana Value Tracker today.
All you homeowners have unique needs. Some feel the need to leave up holiday decorations year-round. Others have the need to use their garage as practice space for their new metal band. And because each homeowner has unique needs, Geico helps you get the right coverage for your home and what's in it. That way, you get exactly what's right for you, even if your needs are unique. Get more with Geico.